Good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday Mull for Saturday, the 11th of February. Robert Murray McShane has us continuing through Mark's Gospel. One of the chapters we read is Mark chapter 14, the story of the Last Supper, Jesus' prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, and his arrest. And as the story of his arrest reaches an end, and we're told that the disciples all flee, everyone deserted him and fled, we then have two verses, 51 and 52. A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. Now, my attention was drawn to those two verses way back when I was a schoolboy, and I read in a Pew leaflet the first recorded streaker in the Bible. And that was a time when streaking started becoming more and more common at sporting events and was in the news. I thought, oh, go and read it. And indeed, there's a story of a young man running naked through Jerusalem. Not quite the same as streaking, but anyway, it was got me to take note of the scriptures. And subsequently, people have suggested that this was probably Mark, because it's not mentioned anywhere else in Scripture. It's not critical to the story. And we know that Mark was much younger than the other disciples. He wasn't one of the apostles. And people suggest that what we have in the gospel is Peter's recollection and Peter's telling of the gospel narrative that Mark records. But for me, there were two things. The one is that here's a young man, unnamed, that's just there with Jesus, following him, part of the scripture, and we don't know who he was. And not everybody, not all of us will be named and known and remembered. There will be many, many of us that, like the young man, will be nameless. A little earlier, there was a woman who anointed Jesus. She too was nameless. Maybe one or two will be the Billy Graham who will be remembered. There might be another Augustine coming through the ranks, or another Cranmer or Luther or one of those great Christian leaders. But for the vast majority of us, we live our lives, follow Jesus, and remain nameless. And that's fine. God will use us in his own way. If this was Mark, God used him with the Gospels. So that was the one thought. The other thought was, sometimes following Jesus will be inconvenient. The young man hadn't anticipated this happening. He must have been terribly embarrassed. It would have been very inconvenient for him. And yet, that's what happens. And so we must be prepared for inconvenience. Hopefully we don't lose our garments, but there will be other inconveniences as we follow Jesus. But we follow him nonetheless because we know that the big picture is so much more glorious. So be encouraged as you walk with God day by day. Be blessed.